Perspective of those of us who are in the business of providing advice to others, providing advice of any kind, of any nature, at any time. So we kind of become the all-knowing guru.
I'm excited to be here because normally in these conversations I have kind of a good idea where to start looking at sort of the background of who I'm sitting down with and kind of going over their expertise. For you, I got to be honest, I'm a little bit all over the place, mostly because you have so much experience and there's so much knowledge that you share. I don't even know where to begin. So I think the best place to begin might be let's kind of rewind back to understand where did this journey even start for you.
Okay.
To get where you are.
Okay. To be silly, I was born at a very early age. I was. I guess the defining moment for me was probably final year of high school. Um, the guidance counselor called me into his office and said, "What are you doing next year?" And I said, "I don't know." And he says, "Well, you're good in math." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Have you ever thought about accounting?" And I thought, "What's accounting?" And so we had a conversation about what accountants were and what they did. And I thought, I'm not sure. But hey, it was a job offer. It turned out that he had an accounting firm wanted a student. So I accepted and said, yeah. It was the first of many misfits in my life, first of many default decisions. So I tried accounting for a couple of months and it was a complete and utter disaster. Decided, what else can I do? I came from a working class family, working class background. So nobody graduated from high school, let alone university. So I didn't have any mentors or relatives that could say, "Hey, Larry, you can this or you can that or you other thing." So I was kind of struggling on my own. At the time, my parents were active in church, Anglican church here in Canada, Episcopalian in the U.S. And church newspaper was hanging around. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll be a priest. So I applied to university and got accepted in a theological college and lasted about half a day there. I didn't really like the other people in the course. I couldn't see myself spending a day with them, let alone the rest of my life. Switched into arts, and it was probably one of the first life-changing experiences I'd ever had. I'd grown up that everybody in the community knew me either through my father, my brother, my uncle, my cousin, or whatever, and nobody really knew me. The reaction of the teachers at high school was that, hey, Larry's a lot easier to get along with than his brother. He's not as much trouble as his brother is. And it took me a couple of years, and I wasn't trying, I was just being myself. University was amazing. People liked me for myself. I interacted as myself. So that was really exciting. I really enjoyed that. So I got involved with a lot of extracurricular activities, involved with student activities, played in a band, joined a fraternity, just, Mr. Sociable. This was in Canada, the University of Western Ontario, which at the time was known as Party Central. I mean, if you want to learn to party, you went to Western, and man, did I learn to party. Third year, we had a new dean of the college where I was on council, and so we're chatting over the reception. He says, "Larry, what are you doing next year?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, you're active in student affairs. Why don't you take law school?" And I said, "Hey, that's cool. Law school's right across the road." And he said, "Oh, no, you should go to another law school." And I said, "Why? What did I do wrong?" And he said, "Oh, I had to get off campus to learn everything." So long story short was I went to law school in Toronto, which was like an hour from my hometown, a couple hours from where I went to university. Became a lawyer, and it was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. Had a couple of disagreements with my bosses, with supervisors. So I thought, if I'm going to be serving clients, I'd rather do it my way rather than being told what to do. So I started my own law practice and thought, oh my goodness, I've started a business. Now what? I've got to worry about all of these business kinds of things. So kind of on the job training, and that worked out. Started to run out of growing room in a small town practicing law. It didn't take long, but my wife and I were really, both university graduates, both fairly intelligent people. And we had two kids, and we thought, we don't really want our children growing up in this environment. We want them exposed to more interesting kinds of things. So sold my law practice, small town, moved to big city, moved to Toronto, started to do some consulting. I was really good at strategic planning and that kind of thing. So I did strategic planning for law firms, and then kind of moved on from there. Another life-changing moment came. I went to a workshop to learn how to market, because as a lawyer, I really didn't have to market. I mean, it's just a case of golfing and curling and skiing and getting to know the community, and people liked me, so they came to hire me as a lawyer. Um, the guy doing the workshop said, if you want to be successful as a consultant, you really have to write a book. And I thought, hey, I like that idea. So, he did a quick overview in terms of writing a book, and I wrote a book. My first book was 1993, How to Succeed in Your Home Business. And at that time, large organizations were downsizing. They were letting a lot of really talented employees go. And these people had great skills. But like me running my law practice, they didn't know anything about running a business. So I wrote a book, How to Succeed in Your Home Business, which felt so amazing. And at that time it was, wow, this is what my life is all about. This is why I'm on earth. So from there, I went on to consulting. Consulting led to coaching, led to another book. But I realized it was really creating content, and not just creating content for the sake of content, but content that did two things: helped me learn from my own experience, and gave me a platform to share my experience with others. So that's been the story since my first book. And since then, I've done a lot of books, hard copy, ebook, video courses, all book length, that kind of thing. And I realized that this is where I'm at now. I consider I'm at the legacy stage of my life, that I'm sensing that my purpose is to kind of make sense of my crazy journey, pull some lessons out of it, and share these lessons with others. So that's where we're at now. And it's just an end note on that story. I thought that was kind of winding things down, wrapping things up. I didn't really want to get involved in any more writing. Just kind of retired. I had this dream of becoming a potter. I love getting my hands dirty, so I want to learn pottery. And I had when I did my most recent book. We moved from the suburbs into the city, and it was just an amazing experience. So I wrote a book, which turned into two books. And then I thought, I don't want to be writing and publishing and marketing two books. What do I do with all this content? So I repurposed some of the content into a video course, a transformation video course. And I still had some useful content left over. So I put that together into a book that I'm just giving away now. And I was thinking, this book is really good, but it needs something else. So I talked to one of the priests in the church I go to, and I said, this book is good. The freebie is good, but I want to enhance it. I want to add. It's all about brain stuff. It's all about mindset. I want to add body and mind to it, or body and spirit to it. So I've got another project to start. Go figure.
Love that.
But that's some of the highlights. I don't want to go into the lowlights. It's Friday the 13th. I'm not going to talk about bad stuff.
Fair enough. Well, it's an amazing story, and I think the common thread that I see through so much of that is this journey of yours to go out and try something else and try something new, and just go and show up and apply yourself to it, and then keep going and keep trying new things and keep pursuing that. And I guess the cool part is that all of those little experiences didn't necessarily define you along the way, but they built all this content and all this education for you that now you can lean on all that experience to help other people with so much diverse perspective. It's a really cool thing looking back. Did you see it that way going through it? Or is it really just
no, for me, it was, I think until I wrote my first book, most decisions were by default. What I mean by a default decision, really wasn't what I wanted, but any decision is better than no decision. So, like right on through from my decision to go into book accounting and then university and then law school, and even practicing law, I wasn't sure. Like, I didn't even know what a lawyer did. In second year law school, most everyone else was talking about articling, and I'm thinking, what is this articling everybody's talking about? And so as I just kind of listened to the conversations, I realized, oh, this is part of the training. Okay, so I guess it's time I figured out what lawyers did. So I went back to my hometown and talked to the lawyer who helped acted for my parents when they bought their house. And I said, basically, I'm in second year law school and everybody's talking about articling. What is articling all about? And so he gave me an overview of what it's all about. And I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I said, so what, I know about Perry Mason and lawyers going to court, but what else do they do? And he says, well, do you want to work for us in the summertime to find out? And I said, well, sure. So there it is again, another default decision. I was articling with them by default. And so all these default decisions, it wasn't until I wrote the book and I thought, yeah, this is what it's all about. And several years later, about 20 years ago, I guess, I took a course in adult education, and it was based on experiential learning. And that was the tool I needed to look back and see that, okay, each one of these stages of my life was basically a learning opportunity. And now I look back and say, yeah, I had to be where I was in order to be where I am now. And that's the advantage of hindsight. I mean, it was very flattering of you to describe me as being ready to take on new challenges. For me, it was just, gosh, what do I do now? And I was personable enough and smart enough and a quick learner, so I could, except for accounting, I could adapt pretty quickly. I could get good good enough fairly quickly. But I didn't until my first book. I hadn't found anything that I wanted to be really, really good at, and that really made
I'm
the
curious,
difference.
from your perspective, if this is true, and just a hypothesis, but I'm sure you have an opinion on it. I feel like a lot of people will make decisions not for, hey, let's see what happens, but rather for sake of cementing their identity if they're not sure who they are, right? Let's say they grow up, and this is the case with my own father. When he grew up, his parents wanted him to be a lawyer. So he pursued law school and he became a lawyer, and to this day he still practices law, but it's never what he wanted to do. And in your story, I don't get a lot of sense of making these decisions based on how you're going to shape your life based on your identity. Have you always had this sort of firm understanding of who you are and didn't necessarily connect it to the success or failure of whatever this thing was you were going to go pursue?
Oh no, not at all. Again, that's very flattering. I want to have more conversations with you. I the family my family of origin, in some respects, a fairly typical working class family. My father was a legendary athlete in his own mind. He thought that he was just the greatest athlete ever. And being Canadian, the game of choice was hockey. So he considered himself a very good hockey player. And my older brother, I had a brother who was 4 years older than I was, and he was also fairly good. He was not ambitious. He had some natural talent, but he didn't really apply it. I could skate. I learned to skate when I was 3 years old, and I was an okay hockey player, but not great. And I was kind of ignored. I mean, the fact that I was doing well in school was a non-issue because this was a family that didn't really value education. I was loved and treated with respect and all those kinds of things. But if my brother scored a goal, that was in a game, that was grounds for celebration. If I got an A, it was, oh, that's just Larry. That's just Larry. So part of me resents being ignored. The other part of me is saying, well, it freed me of all sorts of expectations. It allowed me to not even, I wouldn't say set my own expectations, but it allowed me to do what felt right. Allowed me, I guess, to follow my intuition, allowed me to just what appealed to me. And with that kind of freedom, as a teenager, my summer jobs were working at summer camps because I enjoyed it so much. Nobody in the family had done that. They wondered what I was doing, why I wasn't doing something else. And that was probably the early start of my helping other people learn. And that was a consistent thread. So I was free of the family expectations. The downside is I didn't have the mentor, the wise brother, the wise older brother, the wise father to guide me. But I had the freedom to explore for myself. And when I got into mess ups, when I made some disastrous decisions, which I have, um, nobody was going to help me work it out, so I had to do it myself. So I learned how to look after myself. And I'm not suggesting I was ignored or abused or not treated well as a child. I just didn't fall within the norm. They didn't know how to deal with somebody like me. So they just kind of gave me space and made sure I was fed and clean and polite and all that kind of thing, and just kind of let me go my own way. And it's funny, when I went to university, my mother was really, really happy with that, because she thought it meant that I was going to get a good job. And what she meant by a good job was a job in the office, not on the factory floor. So even when I graduated, they didn't really understand it. They were happy, they were proud of me, and they loved the fact that their son was a lawyer, but they didn't really understand what a lawyer did, what lawyers did. They know they did paperwork, they worked in offices and that kind of thing, but they didn't really understand the nature of my work. And when I was teaching courses and that kind of thing, again, they didn't really understand it because the whole education thing was beyond their experience. So in some respects, I was either a pioneer and an explorer, an outlier. Probably an outlier is a better expression. And for in my as I matured, I kind of resented that I didn't have more guidance as I was growing up. And now I'm thinking, wow, I got to pick and choose mentors. I got to pick the kinds of things I wanted to do. I got to try things. And I realized after not too long that just because I wipe out here doesn't mean I wipe out there.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that part, because, I was going to say, I think one of the most beautiful parts about that, because I had a fairly similar experience, is in the moment, you kind of get a little frustrated that you don't have that mentor above you to kind of give you that experience hands-on. And then as you continue through that journey, you get to a spot where you're almost grateful for it, because it allowed you to develop those skills yourself, where now you're able to use those skills to help other people. So it sort of helps you sharpen that gift that was given to you that, you didn't even see originally. And at least that's the experience that I've had.
Oh, totally. I really do believe that I had to have been where I was to be where I am now and where I want to go. And if I had a more controlling kind of family, I probably couldn't be where I am now, or I couldn't be where I am now as easily as I am now. There would have been a lot of frustrations. I have a friend who she's a writer, and her father was a doctor, and he was really pressuring her to go into medicine. And she really, really resisted going into medicine. And now she and her father get along really well, and he finally accepted that she wasn't right for medicine. But it took him a long time to get over the fact that his daughter disappointed him. And in our conversations, we've said, well, we have to, at some point in time, we have to take responsibility for our own actions and not worry about satisfying other people.
Right.
And in your case, and in my case, without domineering parents or family members or whatever, we've got the freedom to make mistakes and learn from our mistakes. And I think that's been my biggest joy is having the freedom to pick myself up, dust myself off, and start all over again. To quote a song, but and even now when I think about what I'm doing, so many of my peer groups, so many of my friends are retired. I can't think of retirement because there's still so much I want to do. I just can't imagine planning my time around lunch engagements. It just doesn't resonate with me at all. But for other people, it's perfect. So.
And you've got your own kids and a grandchild, right?
Correct.
How do you manage that relationship so it's not an overcorrection?
Well,
and the reason I ask is...
It's a good question. It's interesting because my two daughters are both both basically employees. One of them is working on starting a business, but she has an employee mindset, so it's going to be hard for her. My granddaughter wants to be a women's rights lawyer, and I think that's great. She has not asked me once anything about law school, being a lawyer, not anything like that. And she's thinking going into grade 12. And so what has happened is being the same, oh, that's Larry. And I'm not saying it's pejorative, but my own family is treating me the same distancing as my family of origin did. So what goes around comes around. And my wife was a school psychologist, and so she was an employee for her entire life. So when I talk about employee kinds of issues, I may as well be talking Swahili to her, because it just doesn't resonate. And it's the same with my daughters and grandchildren, that their interests and mine just don't coincide at all. So again, part of me is complaining, I wish they were interested so I could do more for them. The other part of me is, wow, it's so nice not to have to get bogged down in that. It's weird. Sometimes I think, oh, it'd be nice to have a really close-knit family, but then I think, would I really like it? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on personal preferences, kind of how you grew up obviously plays a part in that, because it's what you're used to. So, I think that's going to play itself back out again, like you said. But even if it's not necessarily sharing expertise in the field of law, could it just be general guidance as far as, like, even if you said, maybe your daughter has an employee mindset, how to give her the space and grace to explore that without putting some sort of pressure on her to be, something else.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
To make it totally good to be whatever she's called to be.
Yeah, I can. She recently, she's the oldest daughter is a records manager. She's a master's of library science, and she works for a large organization. Excuse me, used to work in records management. And she did a presentation a couple of weeks ago at a major conference on some aspect of records management. And I'm not sure I even understand what records management is. But anyway, we talked about her doing the presentation. And I offered a little bit of advice in terms of how to do it. She had her PowerPoint slide presentation all set, and she'd rehearsed it and everything. And I gave her just a couple of tiny little suggestions that she might build into her presentation, and it was well received. I told her to tell, instead of just telling facts, tell some stories. Tell some stories from your work situation. And she said she never really thought of that, and she worked it in. And after the presentation, she said her stories went really well. So it was nice to be able to do that. And so it's a case of, I realize now that I've probably internalized Mel Brooks' book, the Let Them Be theory. Let them be who they are so I can be who I am. Right. And it feels good. It feels good. I mean, they know that I'm there. They know that I'm available, and I'm not going to push. I can push myself like crazy, but I'm just not comfortable pushing other people or forcing my opinion on others. So they know that I'm there, but I'm not as involved I'm not as involved with their lives to a great deal at all.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to have those guardrails there. I mean, you've assumably been driving longer than I have. How often you drive on the highway and you see the guardrails on the side? How often have you ever smashed into them randomly?
Oh, yeah.
Probably never.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But it's comforting to know that they're there. Right.
Yeah.
So, I think much in the same way, like being a good friend, being a good parent, you set these guardrails for these relationships so that they know, hey, these are the rough boundaries you should probably stay between. If you get to the extreme, hey, I'm going to be there to help you out. Yeah. But I don't need to be necessarily involved in every interaction.
And that's kind of how I was with clients. I was really lucky because I was trained by my legal training was just great, and part of it was when a client comes in, it's not your problem. Your task is to help solve the problem. It is not your problem. And so I learned very early when clients would say, "Well, what should I do here?" I'd say, "Well, I can't tell you what to do. I can give you options. I can tell you suggestions as to what might happen if you do, but it's your decision, it's not mine. And so it was,
Right.
so I learned very early to not take responsibility for other people's issues. And the same thing goes with family. If my teenage kids do something stupid, I'll help them clean up the mess if need be. But I'm not going to take possession of that problem. It's just I can cause enough problems of my own. I don't need others.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's difficult for people to do who care a lot.
Yeah.
Speaking as someone who cares a lot for other people, sometimes, you want to genuinely help the people that you see. It's difficult to sort of turn a cold shoulder and say, hey, so much as I want to help you, I can't. So good luck.
Yeah.
But I think it's not as cold as that, right? Because if you're solving all their problems for them, first of all, you can't live their life for them. So they're the one who has to live with the repercussion. They have to make the decision. And then they also need to be able to like put that pattern in place to be able to recognize, hey, when I make this decision, I get this consequence, right?
Yeah.
So if we don't allow them to sort of touch the stove and realize it's hot, they never understand that danger, right?
We're going through an interesting family situation right now. One of my wife's sisters has been approved for MAID. Is MAID available in the U.S.? Medical assistance in death?
I don't know.
Okay, well, this is a process that if
not.
someone has a terminal condition, they can apply for and get approval for medical assistance in dying. So it's just a case of a medical team administering the death. Mercy killing, to be blunt, but it's just putting people out of their suffering. So people who have terminal conditions and are not expected to get better can do it. And so we have one of my wife's sisters is going through that now. And one of the issues that came up, excuse me, I need some water here. One of the issues that came up was her will. So I looked at the will, and there were some things in there that I was concerned about. So I raised these issues about the issues in the will. So that was discussed, and there's so much more I want to talk about, but I'm biting my tongue because they've got to work out the emotional things on their own. I can't tell them how to. I don't know how to do it. I mean, this is a new thing for all of us. But I can't tell them what to do. They've got their own way of relating. They've got their own way of dealing with issues. I can give advice in terms of how the will might be changed to make it better and fairer. But it really isn't. My tongue gets sore from biting it to stop from offering unsolicited advice. And it's a challenging situation because, it's new for all of us. Now, granted, there's a lot of information available. So it's just some online search doing. And I'm like that when I see people suffering. I want to help them, but I don't want to get involved. Yesterday afternoon, I was sitting on our patio, and our neighbor came over, and she's probably in her 70s, I guess, and her health is declining really, really quickly. And she was talking about things she wanted to do, and my mind is saying, "Oh, Elizabeth, don't even think that way. Don't even put your head there." And I had to bite my tongue to keep from saying it because I don't want to interfere in her life. If she asks, I'll answer. But it's so hard to back off. I'm learning, and maybe when I grow up, I'll get better at it. But it's tough. It really is tough. It's when somebody knows something when you or I know something that will really help somebody, it's hard to back off and not push the answer at them.
It is, and I also think there's a part of that has to deal with the person who's offering the advice or the opinion, their need to feel loved, appreciated, seen, and heard. Yeah. Because I think a lot of these people don't necessarily get that need fulfilled in other areas of their life. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I kind of bring this up, it relates to me to, hey, when you're scrolling through Facebook and you see someone write something that you have an opinion about, and there's this instant need to just spew your opinion and either correct them or at least put your opinion out there into the world as if your opinion will be the one that changes their mind. I see a lot of these people who don't necessarily get that validation in the real world to feel valued, to feel like their opinion matters. So they need to kind of go and spew it everywhere that they can. And it's a really vicious cycle right? These
Oh yeah.
people then devolve into arguments, and then they start to feel worse about themselves. And I think a lot of that could be either solved or mitigated by people who are just taking the time to sit and listen to other people and
Oh
actually validate their opinions, right? Do you see it sort of the same way?
yeah. And it's interesting from the perspective of those of us who are in the business of providing advice to others. Um, it's a short leap from providing advice an area of expertise to providing advice of any kind, of any nature, at any time. So we kind of become the all-knowing guru who is expected to have an answer for everything. So it's hard to move out of that mindset. Um, when I was very early after I started practicing law, I had a farm client come in. I was in rural Ontario, so most of my clients were farmers. And this man was having an issue with his neighbor, and he started telling me the story. And I was, I don't know, 27, 28. So at the stage I had all the answers to all the questions and that kind of thing. So I listened to the first minute and a half of his story, and he went on and on and on. And as he was going on, I was kind of processing the information, the first 30 seconds worth of information I had. When he finished, I said, okay, so here's the situation. I understand the situation is blah, 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 blah. And what you want is da, 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 da. And I gave him what I thought was a really good legal solution. And his response to me was, well, you got the facts right, but it ain't what I want. And, 27-year-old lawyer being told by a farmer that it's not what he wants. What? I mean, who is this guy? So in exasperation, I said, well, what is it you want? And he explained what he wanted. It turned out what he wanted was an apology. Okay, lesson learned. Shut up and listen. Shut up and listen. And that was a pivotal point, because from then on, whenever I dealt with anybody, at the end of the conversation, I would say, so what do you really want? What's the ideal outcome look like for you? And because of that, I have to force myself not to get too far in, because maybe they haven't thought that. Maybe they don't even want an outcome. Maybe they just want to hang on to the problem and nurture it and make that as part of the identity. So I can't, I don't have the moral or legal right to impose my thoughts on somebody else. So I kind of learned to back off, but it's hard. And in order to do that, it takes a fair bit of confidence, a fair bit of self-confidence, a fair bit of self-knowledge, a fair bit of self-understanding. And that's hard and scary.
Right.
So it's so much easier to do a knee-jerk reaction on somebody else's issues than to really take a deep look at what's happening inside that's triggering my need to answer.
Right. Because I think for a lot of people, if they're wrong about this opinion, they've made it their identity. So now they lose their identity by being wrong about this thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right.
And the victim, I mean, it allows them to be a lifelong victim.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's, where we get into these scenarios where, I mean, you see it played out in so many different levels. It's literally everything from your local town hall all the way up to country relations.
Oh, sure.
It escalates to a point because no one is willing to sit and listen.
Yep.
Right. Because you have to, at a certain point, if you want to genuinely listen, you have to be able to be so confident in your own position that you're willing to listen to the other side.
Absolutely.
Are you willing to just hear what they have to say with an open mind? And that takes a lot of, like you said, self-confidence and trust in yourself. You have to know your identity and not be afraid to be wrong. Because there's a chance if you listen to the other person, your opinion might change. And I think that scares the crap out of a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm doing I've always, for a long time, I've known that I'm a highly sensitive person, and part of that is very intuitive. And now I have the time and the interest to learn more about intuition and how to access the intuition. And intuition really is all about listening to your body. It's listening to yourself. And once you got a handle on that, listening to other people is a piece of cake.
Yeah.
But it starts with creating the space to listen to yourself, so you're comfortable with the space of listening to other people. And it's not easy, and it's not, it's one of those things I guess comes when people are ready for it. Maybe I'm ready for it now. Yeah, that's probably it. being a podcast guest has been just amazing because I learn more than what I give. I get invariably I get back more than what I give out, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, I think, opportunities like this to sit, and it's one of the reasons why I love doing the show this way, where there are no preset questions. I'm not just running from a list of stuff that I Googled about you, is the ability to sit and listen and let the conversation just move naturally.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's where you get to this spot where both of us are growing, both of us are learning, and hopefully the guest is as well. And it's really just this sharing of ideas where you and I can come together, bring our individual expertise, hopefully leave with more than we brought, and the guest gets the bonus in the meantime.
Oh, sure.
And I think that if more people did this, it doesn't have to be on video. It could be at your local coffee shop. It could be the person who you interact with at the gas station.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be an hour-long sit down in front of a camera, but the ability to know yourself, right? Know your area of expertise, not just speak to be heard, but speak on the things that you are knowledgeable on because you've gone through the process, and then share, and more importantly, listen to the other person to hear what they're going to say, not just listening to respond, but listening to understand, right? How much more progress would we see in relationships, in community, in family, if people were doing this on the daily?
Oh, yeah. Two things come to mind. One is facilitation. Part of the adult education course I referred to was facilitating. Was learning how to do group facilitation, and again, that's something I picked up as a teenager, I guess. But the key to facilitation is to only talk 20% of the time and let the other people talk 80% of the time. Wow, that's kind of cool, kind of scary, but kind of cool. And the other is Barack Obama used to say that he was happy being the dumbest guy in the room. Certain criteria. I mean, he doesn't want to be the dumbest guy in the room of dumb people, being the dumbest guy in the room of smart people. I think, wow, what a concept. What a concept. And so it takes some self-confidence. It takes some humility. But it's just, wow, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And I find that so often with the podcast format that it's good guest, good host. It's an exchange.
Right.
I the other day was many years ago. I did a cross country speaking tour here in Canada, and I did the same presentation 21 times in 17 locations. And in one respect, that was a dream. That was a lifetime goal, coast to coast. Sponsored by a bank. Hey, that was kind of cool. But it was the same friggin' presentation. So after 2 presentations, I stopped doing the presentation and I just gave a summary and say, what do you think about this? So I got the audience asking me questions rather than just dumping information. Because after 2 or 3 times, I was bored with the topic.
Right.
And it was so nice to have the input, so nice to have other people asking me questions about what they were interested in. So I could take my content and kind of apply it to their particular situation. So it made for a better experience for me. And I think for them as well. I just can't imagine how bored it would have been if I'd done the same thing 21 times. Whoa. Right. So it just the shut up and listen kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I would tend to imagine that by your last presentation there, the value delivered was double or triple what the first one was.
Well, it's interesting because the last presentation, we had it set up for a 45-minute slot. And I think my speaking time was probably 30 minutes. Well, after 2 presentations, I cut it back to 15. The last presentation was at a service club here in Ontario, and I was an after lunch speaker, but they'd also had another speaker come who was speaking about something else, and he was only going to talk for 10 minutes, and I was going to have 45 minutes. Well, he talked and talked and talked and talked. Wound up, I had like 10 minutes. So I did my 10-minute number because I had done variations of it for 2 weeks, so I kind of knew it. Did my 10-minute number, got a standing ovation, probably because it was so short. And on the way back to Toronto, the guy from the bank that I was with we're driving along. He says, "How did you do that?" And I said, "Do what?" And he said, "You did your entire presentation in 10 minutes." And I said, "Well, John, I've done it once or twice, and I know what's there." And I said, I know what people wanted. So I just kind of summarized what I did. And he says, "Amazing, just amazing." And I said, "Yeah, we could have done the whole thing 10 minutes in Vancouver too. Do you want to start a game?" It was just a case of really listening and cutting it down. There's this other guy, he went on and on and on and on. And I was interested for the first 10 minutes, but after that I was gone. So I just didn't. It was the reception was at a golf club, and I could see myself out on the golf course.
It's amazing, that story, not just, for the story in and of itself, but it really reminds me back of what we talked about before, how every experience you've had has led you up and prepared you for the next one. Had you not done that 20 times before, you would not have had the experience to handle it in 10.
Yeah.
Right. So all of these stories you're sharing have this common thread of, man, they might be frustrating in the moment, but all of them are preparing you for its application in the future. And I love that so much about your story. It's everything is being used for good at some point, even if you don't understand it in the moment.
That's interesting. I appreciate that. And I'd like to take credit for it, but part of my own, I guess, spiritual belief is that I'm not doing this alone. I'm a co-creator. I'm co-creating everything I do, and it depends on your terminology. It's either God, universe, or the spirit. But I am a co-creator. So, although I delivered it, I had a silent co-creator who was helping me along there. So I'm not arrogant enough to take full credit for it. But it is such a and that knowing that one is not alone, knowing that there's a higher element helping us. It's, wow, I can do that. I didn't realize that when I was 20 and 30, but now I'm looking at all the situations, thinking, hey, yeah, okay, that started out bad, but it turned out okay. And I look at what I learned from it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. If you had one bit of advice or a story to tell to relate to people, like to boil down, let's go with the same theme here, to boil down all of your experience over these years into one bit of advice to give to people, what do you think that might be?
Oh, wow. Okay. I would say listen. Okay. Probably 4 listens. Listen to what other people are saying. Listen to what your brain is telling you. Listen to what your spirit is telling you, and listen to what your body is telling you. It is, again, because I'm at the age and stage now that I have the time and the luxury to learn about how our bodies communicate to us. And so certainly listening to clients is important, and any communication, listening is more important than talking. But man, we know so little about how we act, how we learn, how we do, and even if somebody is full of BS, there may be a little gem of wisdom in there. There may not be, but you never know. So, yeah, active listening. It's got to be the best. Got to be just the best.
I love that. Big fan of that, and big fan of this conversation and of you, sir. So I want to honor you for all the things that you have done, continue to do, and just living your life out loud, because I myself am better for this conversation. I know that you impact a lot of people on the daily. So again, just huge honor to you to sit down and have this conversation. Tremendously appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me, especially today. It's great. Thanks. I appreciate that.